first thing that you want to be aware of is that the only moment that is important is the moment that is now. There is no reason for you to believe that your talk was shitty yesterday, it was going to be shitty today, or you don't have to fear, or what would 1,000th person sitting in the back row think about me when I say these things. If you can eliminate all of that and be like, I'm here, I'm in this moment, and I want to fully be present to the moment of what is happening, you will find there is a great amount of power in your prep and in your delivery.
I want to talk about your journey. You started off as a coach and then a business owner, and now what our industry calls as a thought leader, right? Someone who speaks on stages, hosts a podcast, writes books. Did you always see yourself going on this path of coach? And then, here you are building this public presence. Like, was this part of the plan for you?
My intention to do what I do is always in connection to how it relates to my values. So one of my top 4 values is service. And service is an act of contribution. Service is, and it doesn't have to be through only work, in anywhere in life, is can I contribute to humanity overall, to another person, to another being, in any way I can, if I can, right? So when I started coaching, the intention was the same. I feel a sense of joy when I'm able to contribute to somebody or to something that is important in the world outside, or it feels important to me in the world outside. And so that's why I became a coach. Then I started operating more from a place of business ownership, because I realized there's only that much a person can do. Like, I can coach a person, I can coach a company, and yes, your impact is still manifold, but there's a ceiling to it. So I said, what is my real genius? What is it that I'm really, really good at? And while, yes, I'm great as a coach and somebody who can have a conversation that would draw things out and help somebody change their life, I'm also really good at being able to see different pieces that bring something together. I am also somebody who I've been told a very good leader, or a great leader in many ways. I am also somebody who looks at business in a slightly different light. I don't see it as an act of strategy. I see it as an act of being, or a beingness to it. And so a different kind of a person resonates with me versus a person who's just looking for the next hack.
Right.
That's not an ideal person for me. Or they wouldn't love me as much as somebody who would be like, oh, I want to be an expression. My business is an expression of me. And that's where I really land as a coach, as a partner. And so as an entrepreneur, I realized, hey, I don't want to contain or limit what I can do just because of certain number of companies I can coach, or certain number of people I can coach. And also because I love my lifestyle where I work only a few hours every week. I have time with my kids, I have time with my wife, I have time with my parents, I have time with my friends, I have time to travel, all the things I want to still do while being of service, right? So that brought my attention to saying, well, if I partner with the right people that have the same intentions as me, I can impact even more people. And that was the journey of taking what I'm really good at, that I was only translating in a one-on-one business setting or one-to-team business setting, and saying, what if this becomes a partnership? Because now I am a part of a larger outcome, right? I can truly impact a lot more people. And that became expressions like EverCoach, expressions like other coaching businesses that I have, or coaching partnerships that I have, partnerships that we have with Mind Valley. They all became that expression, because that's the entrepreneur in me saying, I have unique skills and capabilities that can add tremendous amount of value because of how I think, how I operate, what my value system is very unique. Like everybody's is, right? But I was just able to tap into that. And then coincidentally, what happened because of that is, when you become an entrepreneur, when you become a coach, is that you have access to a lot of insight and information as well. And information sometimes leads to insight, sometimes insight leads to information. And so it became a conversation. So podcast was birthed out of that. First, it was the YouTube channel that we started, EverCoach. That was the first thing that birthed out of it. It was like, you have so much insight, so much information. You're not always trying to say, hey, how I can draw some cash out of a person. I want to be able to be of service. And a great way to do that is any of the social channels, including YouTube, including Apple podcasting platform, or Spotify podcasting platform, or Instagram, depending on the modality that you use. So it was like, okay, how do I express that and be able to help people even when they pay me $1 before that, right? So again, it's an expression further into service, is to say, okay, let's do that. And that's where YouTube started. Then I also enjoy a lot of conversations, and that's really what I do, is what I find interesting all the time. So I said, let's do that. One of the asks that the community said is, everybody has interviews, but nobody really shows us behind the scenes of how you would coach. And so we said, okay, let's show people exactly how I would coach, at least in my from my reality, even if I didn't know the person. So literally what we do is every single week or every other week, we post a episode where they're just listening into a coaching conversation that I've had with someone, which is recorded specifically for the purpose of the podcast. So I don't know the person. I don't know what they're going to come up with as a problem. And I just use the methodologies that I teach in Certified Life Coach or Certified Business Coach, which are our 2 certifications, to be able to help somebody through life or business challenges that they may bring. Even health challenges, because all health coaching is life coaching, really. The behavioral change is all life coaching. So it's basically, that's what we did there. We said, okay, let's demonstrate that to more and more people. And that, of course, led to, as more and more people listen to your narrative and your dialogue, more and more people get interested in saying, wow, that would be great to have on our stage. Like if there is no conflict, and I don't bring conflict to anybody's stage anyway. So it's basically individuals saying, hey, we'd love for you to talk about, how you deal with fear on our stage, or what are the different ways of really getting self-aware. These are the usual master talks or the signature talks that people ask me to present, is either around fear and courage, or around different levels of self-awareness and different dimensions of self-awareness. Because again, it's one of those popular terms that we all know, but we don't really. We don't really diagnose it. We don't really try to understand what it means. And so that's where that whole conversation started. And I enjoy doing it. So that's really where that is. It's not a business strategy. Actually, probably the lowest return on my time is to speak at somebody's stage or do a podcast, because the amount of work and the amount of value we are able to generate just through our platforms is far greater than most platforms. But it's something that adds to the world and value to the world. So it's great.
I want to point back to the fact that you speaking on stages and your journey going from coach to business owner to speaking on stage all goes back to your core values, which I know you talk about all the time, are your core values. You have 4 of them. And so I want to speak to the person who really has a desire to speak on stage and who wants to be able to impact more people, because this one-on-one, that's one-on-one, right? But if you can take that and spread that, you can take that and impact more people. It all sounds fine and dandy until we actually have to do it, right? And so what were the mindset blocks that you've had on this journey, and how did you coach yourself through them? Like from going from the safety of one-on-one and no one really seeing you, to then, oh wait, I'm going to write a book and like people are going to see how I think, to, oh my God, I'm going to be on stage and people are seeing me and watching me. Was it as easy as, okay, I'm going to do this because this is one of my core values, service, or did you have your own blocks that you had to work through?
So I had my own blocks, and to be very honest, I was a terrible speaker when I started, and I want to share that with everyone. Please. Because people think that, oh, you just got on stage and it was great. That's not true. I was called on some stages because of my background and the success I was having, and so I presented on some stages. And a lot of the people that do good events tend to always get some feedback from the audience. And I specifically remember there was a particular event I spoke at, and I was the 3rd lowest rated speaker. So, if there are 10 speakers, I was 7th on that, as one of the terrible person that spoke and didn't resonate with the audience. People didn't love it, and that type of stuff. And I was the main stage speaker. I wasn't a small stage speaker. And that made me realize that while you may have the intention to present, it is also, like anything else, a skill that you have to build. You can't just say, oh, I was great in one-on-one, I'll be great on stage. It's not the same skill. It's a different skill. And so I said, okay, if I think this is meaningful to me and this is interesting and exciting and it gives me joy when I'm able to do that, I need to get better at it. And so the first thing that I did is I engaged a couple of coaches that would show me about storytelling, about how to make presentations, what really gets people's attention. And then I also spoke to a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Lisa Nichols, who's an amazing presenter on stage. She's an amazing storyteller. And she gave me this concept of saying, Ajit, there are different types of speakers.
Right.
And she saw me on stage one time and she said, you're not a bad speaker, you're a content speaker. What happens, what that means is you go on stage and you just blast people with content, right? You just tell people, I'll do step 1 through 7. That doesn't make you bad. it makes it hard for people to resonate, because at the end of that presentation, people go, you are smart, right? So yes, they walk away going, Ajit's really smart, but it doesn't help them because they didn't feel they're smart. They didn't feel they can do it. They didn't feel like it didn't land for them in a way where they can actually do something about it. All they go walking away from it is, wow, that guy is a genius. Great, good for you, right? But it's not helping your tribe. So nothing wrong with being a content speaker if you were in an office and you were making a presentation, because there you're not trying to connect with the audience. You're trying to just give them a strategy that they need to deploy. So it's okay if you are a content speaker. You just need to understand that's not a main stage speaker, because you need to connect with the audience if you are a main stage speaker.
Do you think that you became a content speaker, or your natural tendency was to give a lot of this content because you wanted your audience to think that you were smart? Was there a part of you, like maybe in your own mindset, that maybe was a little bit scared, and the way that you overcame that was like, let me show my audience how smart I am? I mean, I don't think you consciously did that, but do you think that was part of what was driving you to blast people with content rather than having them connect with you?
It's very possible now that you say it. I haven't thought about it that way. What I know, it's very possible that that's what I was doing because I was starting out. So I wanted to be smart. I wanted to be somebody that go, wow, this guy is great, right? So it's very possible that I was operating from that place. What I was conscious and aware of as I was talking to Lisa, and I was talking to other coaches as well, is they said, what you're really doing is you're overwhelming your audience because you're trying to jam a lot of things into a short presentation. You have 30 minutes and you're trying to do too much in 30 minutes. If you get one really good idea through in those 30 minutes, you've landed a lot more impact with the person. But because you feel like you're not good enough, you feel like adding more content to it will at least drive, some kind of output to the person, but it's actually making it worse for them. It may feel to you, oh, look how much I gave. But to them, it was gibberish after a point because they couldn't even take the first point while you were on point number 7. Right. So they said it works in some scenarios. If you are doing a business presentation, it works because there people are actively looking for tactics. And so you're going, okay, these are the 7 tactics. They will take that out. They will use what they need to. So it does work in some settings. It's not that if you're a content speaker, you're a bad speaker. It's just the scenario of if you're trying to speak to a large audience, you cannot jam too many ideas because you're not talking to the few that are really listening. You're talking to the person also who's not necessarily focused, who's tired, who's kind of a little grumpy, maybe hungry, depending on what time you're going on, maybe a little sleepy if you're going right after lunch. So you're speaking to all of them. Wow. And so your knowledge gap to them cannot be this big, right? You could do that in a small contained audience. If you're talking to 20 people, 30 people, because you could really connect with each person, you can go heavy on content. That's okay. But if you're talking to 500 people, you can't just like download a big load of just, content on them and expect that, oh, wow, everybody would have got it. They don't. They don't get it. You're overwhelming them. You're boring them, and they are not interested in your talk. And that's why I was getting rated really, really bad. And that is a tendency I've seen coaches and people do generally. I was speaking to a friend yesterday. I was just helping her out in designing her vision in a way, because she was going to make a presentation to a few investors, and she had this big vision of creating something, and it was big and magnificent, and she had 5 minutes to present. All right, so I was like, if you do this big vision in 5 minutes, where they can't, because it was one of those esoteric concepts, it's not like a simple concept like A plus B equals to C. No, it's like a complicated, esoteric approach to certain things in life without giving too much away. And I was like, if you try to present this, they're not gonna get it because it's really big vision. If you have only 5 minutes, if you have more time, maybe yes. What they will get is a story of how you went from point A to point B, or point A to point C. And that story will probably stick a lot more with them, and maybe one piece of this big vision, right? Take one of the ideas that will start the journey. Instead of getting them to invest in this big thing in 5 minutes, try to get them to invest in this thing in 5 minutes. Because if you can get that, you can open a conversation for a bigger conversation. And then you can say, let's sit 20 minutes, let's do Q&A. Let me really present what the whole idea is about. And you have a bigger opportunity of actually getting through that, because now you have full attention. You have 20 minutes with them. You actually can do justice to your vision. And so that's something that happens in life. Like as an entrepreneur, it can happen to you. As a business owner, it can happen to you. As a leader, it can happen to you, where you would jam too much because you feel not good enough within yourself. And you feel like the only way I can justify somebody's time, attention, energy, or acceptance, which is what you want as a speaker, you want the audience to be like, I loved listening to this person. you want their acceptance, and so you jam so much because you feel like you as a speaker is not good enough, or one of your points is not good enough. Right. So that's something that we have to actively go, there is the talk, and that might be a bucket load of things, and then you take away stuff from it. You say, okay, what is the act of editing of a talk, which makes it tight and succinct and something that a person can go, oh, that landed. Right. So that was early stage where I became a little bit better as a speaker because I started taking things out of my talk. Even if I knew like it's kind of incomplete in some way for me, I was like, no, but this kind of is what will actually land. That would actually resonate, will do something for the person. And that was version 2.0 of Ajit as a speaker. Then I learned the ultimate thing. And the ultimate thing to me is a speaker is great because they're themselves.
Thank you for saying that. Yes.
And I think that's a really difficult thing to do when you're speaking in front of a lot of people, because you feel, if you've ever in your life felt not loved, if you've felt in your life that you didn't land a conversation, if somebody didn't like really love and accept you the way you are, you think 500 people, definitely most of them will not love and accept the way you are, right? So because you're like, there's no way.
You're expecting not to be loved. You're just expecting it. Yeah.
You're expecting it, instead of saying that if I have somehow had the opportunity to be in front of these people, there's something loving about me. There's something that is inherent to me that called, the universe said, you should be on that stage. 20 people, 200 people, 2,000 people, doesn't matter. But something was true and present and lovable enough that the universe said, you're ready to be in front of this audience, right? And once you accept that reality, what happens is all the baggage of I need to be accepted by the audience goes away. What you really lean in with then is, what is my honest, most beautiful version, or my most available version that I can present, I will present. But the version I understand of myself, of who I am, how can I be all of that in front of my audience? And once you do that, what I found, at least for me, is my storytelling got better. Because I didn't try to rush a story. I didn't try to impress somebody with a story. When I was telling a story, I was just telling the story how I would tell anyone, like to a friend. It would have the pause, it would have the break, it will have me laughing at my own jokes. It would have all the stupidities that a person would do in a regular one-on-one conversation. And then what I realized as I was being more of myself is I also started bringing things into my talks that otherwise would not be the case. Like, for example, I would tell funny stories in the middle of my talk, or I would add humor to my talk. Otherwise, I was trying to be like the right guy, right? So I was like, yeah, here is what you do. Step 1 through 5, and there is no jokes, and we are serious, and life is very serious, and we must talk about this, like else you're gonna die. But that's not like, then I said, no, that's not how I am when I'm talking to a friend. It's silly, it's stupid. At the same time, it's important. Importance is not deteriorated by humor. It's actually probably elevated by it. So humor started to add in. Then I said, well, I'm naturally someone, if you come to my house and you've been to my kids dance, I dance, my wife dances, we love dancing, we like music, it's loud in our house. So I was like, hey, that's what we do in our house. So when you are coming to my talk, you're coming to my house's party, right? So there's dance in my events now. There is karaoke in my events right now. There is very specific rituals that we all do. There are these bands that we wear, which are, instead of giving you those plastic bands, we give you these. It's like, hey, listen, I'm an intentional person. Everything in my life is an intention. So my intention is on my wrist, and you will get the same when you walk through my door. And so it's basically coming to a really big house party, especially my own events. When I'm speaking at somebody else's events, of course, I can't do all of it. I would do some of it. But if you're coming to one of my events, it's a big party. It's basically how you would be if you met me as a person, just on a scale of if there were 100 people meeting me at the same time, or 500 people meeting me at the same time, or 1,000 people meeting me at the same time, depending on which event we are doing. It would be the same. There's no difference. There's absolutely zero difference. So if I would be funny, you will see me funny. If you will see me fumble at my house, you will see me fumble on stage. If you would see me being, dancing, then you will see me dancing at house. So you're literally coming to the honest version of me, and not a version that I put up as a person on stage. Which is why, and this is the greatest compliment I got at all of my recent events that I've spoken to, is once I would get off stage and people would meet me in person, they were like, what we love about you is how you were up there is exactly how you're down here. Like there is no like, oh, that was your stage persona and now you're a completely different asshole. You're not. You're exactly like that. You seem like a humble, gentle guy who doesn't take himself too seriously, who is being as honest as he possibly can be, has great mindset, doubts himself. All of that shit that we see on stage is exactly how we see you here right now. And that's amazing. Don't change that. Right. And so I actually have told some of my students, like, remember, you told me this right now. If I ever change, now it's your responsibility to tell me and remind me, dude, you changed. Don't change.
Yeah.
Don't become two different persons. And that was a good reminder. Like I have actually agents in my community that will come and tell me, dude, you changed. So I'm happy about that because, you know, sometimes you could get in your head and you can change, but I don't want to do that. I think it's there's power. And I think that's what I think great speakers are. Great speakers are just, you know, authentic. I know it's very commonly thrown around word, but really, that's what it is.
It is I always see it as like, and I agree with you. The greatest compliment that someone can give me, like if I see someone out in Austin and they're like, "Oh my God, I follow your Instagram," and I'm like, "Oh my God, hey!" Like I talk the way I would with anyone, and it's like that's the greatest compliment. Is that, and also it's not even the greatest compliment. It gives you a lot of inner freedom to just be one person, right? Like ultimately, it's about you get to now impact even more people because you're no longer concerned about, do you accept me? Do you think I'm smart? And the greatest medicine that you can give your audience is to show up and just be completely you.
Yeah.
So how do you prep now before you get on stage? Like, I don't know the largest audience you've ever spoken in front of. How many people? Like, what's the largest?
I think largest was 1,000.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it doesn't matter.
1,000.
Yeah.
Largest.
So regardless whether it's a small audience or a big audience, how do you self-coach yourself now? Like literally like a few days leading up to this event. What is the mindset? What is the self-talk that you're telling yourself to prep yourself? Because we are human. And even though you know, like, I don't need anyone's acceptance, I just want to be myself, thoughts can still creep in because we get scared. What do you tell yourself?
So how I coach myself is the same way how we teach coaching and self-coaching to anyone. Is there is the understanding of the present moment, which is the first step, is to, or not really the first step, but the first thing that you want to be aware of is that the only moment that is important is the moment that is now. There is no reason for you to believe that your talk was shitty yesterday, it was going to be shitty today, or you don't have to fear, or what would 1,000th person sitting in the back row think about me when I say these things. If you can eliminate all of that and be like, I'm here, I'm in this moment, and I want to fully be present to the moment of what is happening, you will find there is a great amount of power in your prep and in your delivery because you're not concerned about what happened or what can happen. You're only concerned about what is happening. This also makes you a powerful speaker because when you are on stage, often you'll realize like some things don't work with the audience. Different audiences are different. Their relationship with you or your relationship with them is different sometimes. And because of that, you need to adapt. And there is no way you can adapt if you're not present to what's actually happening. If you have this rehearsed talk that you're going to just repeat like a parrot, well, then that talk's not going to land as powerfully as a talk that listens to what's actually happening in the moment, is kind of leaning into that energy and saying, I think this is where we're falling. Let's do this. Like, let's create some movement. It feels like the energy is off a little bit. Or even when I get on stage, sometimes I go, oh, the previous speaker just killed the room. Like, because they were just, doing that content thing and people are like, holy shit, I need a coffee before I listen to the next guy. So if you cannot give a coffee break, you got to be the coffee. Right. So you got to create that energy to go, okay, let's bring this energy so we can have kind of a reset before, I go actually deliver my talk. So I have people in the presence. So that, all of that you cannot do as prep. You have to be present to the moment. So presence is the first key, is to really recognize this is the moment and be in that moment. And then second is to organize your mind in a way where you're not challenged by, and that's I think is one of the keys, is the size of audience can be 10 or 1,000. The fear is the same. The magnitude might be different, but the fear is the same, right? I will not be loved. I will not be accepted. They won't get my point. They won't laugh at my joke. Whatever the thing is, right? It's like, whatever that is, the fear is same. The magnitude changes. And that's true for anybody who's a speaker. They have the same fear that they had when they started. It's not different as a fear. It shows up different, and they have a process that is different to get over that fear, right? But the fear is fear. Like any great performer has fear before they get on stage, right? And that's what makes them a great performer, because they're not taking it for granted. They don't take their audience for granted. They know they have to show up with 1,000% like they did in their first show.
My father always said, if you're not scared before you get on stage, something's wrong. My father said, like, you need to have just a little bit. It means you care. It means that you care. So, and I want to say this to anyone who has a dream of becoming a speaker, want to become a better speaker. And I want to piggyback off of what you said, that the fear is the same. So I've been asked to speak in front of a few groups. I have one that's 150. I have a group that's 12. The fear is exactly the same. Yeah. For me, my limiting belief, I don't want to call it a limiting belief because it's not limiting me, but the belief that I have is I'm not going to make sense. You're not going to understand me. This is not going to land. And it's not so much am I smart enough? I have some of that, but it's like, what I'm saying is not going to make sense. I know where that comes from. I know where in my childhood it comes from, blah, 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 blah. What I do the minute I start to feel that, because then it starts to take over, it starts to clog my creative channel, I say, okay, we're going to address this tomorrow. And then I'll put aside time on my calendar where I'll actually map out what are the things that I want my audience to know. I'll brain dump everything. Then I'll come back a few hours later and then I'll sift through it and I'll be like, what's actually relevant for this audience? I wanted to share this because when people have this fear, they immediately shut down, and it's like, no, you don't need to shut down. Just acknowledge that you're scared. Like, first thing is like, oh, I'm scared. I'm scared. I feel this way. What's showing up? And then when you actually sit down to prepare, whether that's brainstorming, brain dumping, mapping out, and then you start to practice whatever that looks like for you, and also really look at what's coming up for you and what are some of the things that are getting in the way from you being present. I think ultimately you will get on stage and really be a powerful speaker who can be that caffeine for your audience, right? But it is a process. So for you, do you prep a lot? Do you practice a lot before you get on stage? Like, what's your process?
No, I don't prep a lot. So before I get into the prep part of things, the first thing that I would say is right before the organizing your mind part is to understand what is it that is, like you said, is what is that's coming up for you? Mm-hmm. What is it that you're really fearing? What is it that is the concern? What is it that you feel like will happen or think will happen? And then to choose a more productive thought or a more empowered thought in that moment to say, okay, what is it that actually helps me being a better presenter? If I feel that this audience is not going to resonate with me, or if I feel that I'm going to do my best. Right? Yeah. What is the thought that I'm going to choose? I'm going to do my best.
Right.
And that's all I can do. That's all anybody can do, really, is to do our best. We tell this to our kids all the time, but we forget as human beings. Like, we tell our kids, just do your best. But then when we show up in our life, we go, oh, but I must also get results for doing my best. Yeah. And we're like, no, you just do your best. And then you wish, you hope, you wonder if it will create the results that you really wanted to create. But the only thing that you can be responsible for is the act of showing up in the most powerful, best version of yourself. And if you can change that mindset, if you can present from that mindset, you already have won 50% of the game, because you're not concerned about the result. You're more concerned about the process. And the process itself is beautiful, right? Because when you present to 5 person, or you just present to 50 or to 500, just the joy of giving from a place of just absolute love and kindness where you connect with someone is just a beautiful, joyful experience. So everybody should become a speaker at some point in their life, in my personal vision of life. Yes. And then I think there are certain things that one must do, which leans into bioengineering, is that you must know what your body is going to need before you go on stage. So it's very specific things that my body needs. I'm not saying this is true for everyone. So there's a very specific coffee that I drink. It's called Strong Coffee. It's called Strong Coffee Company. It's like an American thing, so it's not available globally. But it's basically a powdered coffee, which gives you about 120 milligrams of caffeine, but it has MCT oil and it has some collagen protein in it. So what it does for me is, if I can have that coffee, not right before I go on stage, right in the morning, what it does is give me sustained energy through the entire day. And so that's one thing that I would do. Like, for example, before our podcast, that's the cup of coffee that I would drink starting off my day, like at 9:30 in the morning, 9:30 in the morning, because that's what I know will give me sustained energy in the day. Second thing that I know that will give me sustained energy in my day is if I could find a moment of presence, just a moment of just calming down and knowing that I'm good here, right? The third thing that I need is the right kind of music that triggers the right kind of emotion. The music that I like is a song called Feeling Good, but I like the remix version of it right now. And the reason for that is because the essence of that music or that song is that life's good. Just enjoy what is. Like, what is beautiful. Like, it so feels good if you lean into just the nature of life. And so it puts me in that state. But I like the remix version because it also amps up your energy. The original version is a little bit slow. So I love that before my coaching sessions. It's perfect because I want to calm my nervous system down. But before I'm going on stage, because I am now going to expand my energy into 100 people or 1,000 people, I need to build my energy up. I can't be like, okay, let's go calm. I can't do that. I need to be up. Or at least that's what I feel I want to be. So that's one more thing that would happen ritualistically. That's another thing that would happen. So you want to find your biomarkers. You want to find what is it that really triggers you. Like, for example, I shouldn't eat before I go on stage. Like, absolutely not. Even if I'm going later on stage, usually I would eat lunch after because most events end by 5. And I can easily fast till that time. I might have a little nibble somewhere in the middle, but not a full meal. Because I know that takes away energy from me, or I feel like it takes away energy from me, especially when I'm going on stage, because I'm going to give 1,000%. I'm not just coming in to do work. It's like, 1,000% times more. At least that's how I feel. I'm more energized. So I look for those biomarkers, and everybody has some to be able to kind of tune into and find out what's true for them, what habits are true for them, what models are true for them that will give them the most energized version of themselves. And lastly is I take 1 second to kind of lean into universe to guide me. So I don't practice my talks a lot. I do practice a little bit, but I wouldn't go, oh, I'm going to do a day-long prep to do a talk. And I still deliver as beautifully. The reason is twofold. One, because I really know my content, so I don't have to, I'm not preparing the talk for content. I know exactly what the content is. I've taught it enough times that I'm like, it's second nature to me. I don't even need slides. Slides can be turned off and I can still do my talk. I use them for visual cue for my audience, but I don't need them. What I'm really leaning into is how can I tell the story more contextually? And that's really what I'm practicing. If I'm practicing or prepping, contextually to the group that I'm about to talk to. Right? Because let's say if I have a story around scuba diving, that may not resonate with somebody, which are, let's say, a group of accountants. I'm not saying it would not, but I might say, okay, if I'm talking to accountants, I have an accounting story that kind of relates a little bit better. If I have a better story, if not, I will use the story that I have. So those are the things that I might prep a little bit to kind of just make sure that I've got the in right. But after that, it's free flow. And then I'm again connecting to the audience. My talks are not just me talking. It's me getting people to say things, getting people to engage, making fun of the crowd, making fun of myself. So it's like, it's very interactive and playful. So it's like, I'm always joking around a little bit. So it's kind of chill. Yeah.
I love that all the tips that you shared to prep yourself have like not a lot to do with the actual talk itself. It's so much more about you and your presence and how you show up on stage. And I also really love that distinction. And I think this is where people really, you do need to be in touch with your body. Like when you're on a coaching call, you want to be in a calmer state, right? Because you're holding space for this client, right? But when you're on stage, that is not the time to be calm unless you're like leading a meditation, right? You are here to be the hype man. You are here to, inject people with that strength, courage, and hope. We don't need you calm. We need you excited so you can infuse that life. So just like, that's really important that you're sharing. There is different music for different things. There is a different type of drink that you may drink, but this is really about getting to know yourself. And this is really why, having that self-awareness, which I'll really preach and teach inside of a coach, is so important for anyone who wants to go from coach to business owner to thought leader. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I'd love to hear, what are your biggest lessons from this journey? Like what is one thing you wish you would have known before you first got on stage? Like if there was anything.
I think I knew it, but I couldn't do it. Which was because I had taken enough courses and talked to enough coaches that I knew that eventually it comes down to you being authentic. But knowing it intellectually and being authentic is two completely different things. And that's what most of us are stuck with, if you really think about it. Is all of us understand we need to be authentic. We just can't be. Because there's a journey that needs to be had of acceptance, of forgiveness, of connecting to who you truly are, accepting who you truly are, forgiving for the parts of you that you feel are not, you don't like, doing the shadow work if that's needed. So it's many layers of that needs to happen, and you don't have to rush it. You know that you're not. I am no Lisa Nichols still. Like Lisa comes on stage, it's like fucking I'm crying.
Yeah,
and
I'm like snot running out.
Laughing.
Yes.
It's a bloody.
It's a mess.
It's
we are a
amazing.
mess. We are a hot mess.
Hot mess, but it's the most beautiful hot mess you could have. So I am not Lisa Nichols. I'm not, and I am Ajit. So I don't have to be Lisa Nichols either. But my storytelling is not at her level, is what I'm really trying to say, right? And one day maybe it will be, maybe it won't be, because there is a level. We are all having a journey. We are all having an experience. I don't have to rush to get to storytelling like Lisa Nichols, or not be on a stage until I am like Lisa Nichols because of some flawed understanding of what really is a person or not. You're discovering yourself, and you go, oh, this version of me comes in with this music, does this presentation, and really leans into this area, right? Another version of me is another, like if you see me a year from now, it'll be a different version. A year from then would be a different version. And that's the fun part of it. If you're the same speaker that you were 3 years ago, what's the fun of being a speaker? Right? You're just repeating yourself in different platforms, and that's all it is. That's not fun and exciting. You'll probably get bored out of your own mind talking about the same talk in the same way for the 100th time. So I would invite us to say, hey, it doesn't matter. You don't have to nail, like, I now know what version of me is there, how to unlock it, what's the practices for it, and what I have to accept and what I don't have to accept, and blah, 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 all of that stuff. It doesn't matter. The thing that you need to know is eventually it all boils down to you understanding that you're an incredibly likable person if you can be yourself and not a reflection of other people's projection of you, which is what most of us tend to be on a day-to-day basis. And the faster you unlearn that and accept that, the easier it will be for you to be the version that you truly are. And that makes you better everywhere in life. You're a better partner, you're a better parent, you're a better speaker, you're a better author, you're a better communicator, better coach, better everything. Because you're not finding another version of you that, and I know some people kind of teach these as tricks. Oh, put on a mask and now you are the presenter version of you. And then you tap into the non-presenter version of you. I get it, but I don't know why they hate one version of them that they can't present it. I'm like, no, all versions of you is very presentable. It needs to expand. It needs to know the techniques, because these are skills. These are not there's identity, and identity is always lovable. All identities are lovable. All identities, like, it's just we think, oh, that's not a lovable personality. All identities, all personalities are lovable. Look at celebrities, people who got famous. None of them look like the other guy or the other girl, right? They all look different. They all act different. Their music is different if you like music, right? I mean, who would have thought Billie Eilish will be popular?
Yeah, I mean, but she's
when I first listened to Billie Eilish, I was like, she just sounds really sad.
Yeah, but people love the emo. People love it.
People love Billie Eilish.
But also,
right? I thought the only people who were successful are people like Lady Gaga. But there's a completely different vibe to Billie Eilish, completely different vibe to Adele. So who tells you that your identity is not lovable? Every identity is lovable. Do you get to lean into it? Do you expand into it? Do you really go all into who your identity is? If the answer is yes, yes, and yes, you will find that a lot of people love you. And that's like, there is no reason for you to assume a different identity because you're on stage and because you're coaching and because you're with your parents. No, you're the same person. It also takes away all that pressure of changing yourself every time.
So, you have a lot of people in your life who have guided you. I know you're really close friends with Vishen, and I would love to know, what has your relationship with him taught you about showing up publicly?
So what I love about Vishen is that he is an ever-evolving human being.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have any, I'm trying to find the right word. He doesn't have any concern if somebody thinks less or more of him, right? He just simply knows that he is a human being and he's evolving with time. And some version of him may not be acceptable to some people, and then some version of him eventually is acceptable to people. He doesn't really... Again, at least to me, it doesn't look like that he concerns himself with it. He just simply says, hey, I'm an evolving version. I'm going to continue to evolve. I'm going to continue to find the next version of myself, which is what I love about him. It's like, he's not trying to be anything to impress you. He's just trying to be a better version of himself.
For himself.
Yeah, he's just doing it for himself. Like, hey, this is the challenge. I want to get over it. I'm working on my mindset around it. And he's honestly working on it, right? So it's not like he tells it. You meet him 6 months later, he's worked on it. Like, it really has. Like, he's like, you would go actively the same conversation, and his belief is different because he actively works on it. So he's not just somebody who talks about personal growth. He really believes in it. He actually practices it a lot. Even today, like, he's not somebody who would tell you I'm the perfect being. He will say, no, I'm working on, these are my current things that I'm working on. I'm rating myself really high on these things, but here are the things that I'm struggling with. And he would be real about it, at least to his friends, and also in public. Actually, he's very real about it. Especially if you're at an event, he's very open about what are the areas that he's working on and what are the things that he would love to get more better at, and so forth. And that's what I love about him, is that he's very, very much centered around that. And he appreciates his quirks, because he's like all of us, he's a quirky guy. Like, there are certain things that is weird about him that you would go, what was that? But he loves it about him. He really presents it in the way where he's like, this is who I am, and that's what you get. And he's no what do you say? He's not sorry about it. That's not the right word, but
he's not apologetic about who he is.
Yeah, he's not apologetic about it. He's unapologetic about who he is. And he is also very much always in a place of saying, oh, you meet me 3 months later, I'm a different person, because I'm always learning, and I'm always growing, and I'm always trying to find the next version of me. And he's very comfortable with that. So those are things that I love about him.
And that has helped you on stage, because you have no problem sharing with your audience and growing out loud, right? I would love to segue into giving some great advice to coaches, people who really want to pursue this journey about, getting on stage, impacting as many people as they can through their story, through their storytelling. So let's just say a new coach comes to you, right? And they're sharing this beautiful vision of like, Ajit, I really want to sell a lot of books. I want to share my story. I have so much wisdom that I want to share. And I want to get on stage, and I want to be invited to speak on stage. And they're sharing this vision with you, right? What are your practical steps that you would offer to somebody who wants to be on this journey? And honestly, be like you. Like, I don't mean be like you, but have the life that you... Be the
version of themselves.
Yeah, you're the kind of person that gets off stage. I remember Neetha was saying this. She's saying so many people wanted to hug you. They wanted to take photos with you. Like, you have touched so many people's lives. And I think we all have that deep yearning to be able to impact people in that way, right? So what would be your advice for people wanting to start on this journey or continue on this journey?
So one thing that we must all understand is we are all infinite potentials and infinite universe. There's no reason to believe that you can't have the big vision, you can't have the big dream. And what advice I'm going to give you kind of originates from the idea of the Big Bang, right? So the theory of Big Bang, which is, again, it's a theory, but the theory of Big Bang is the universe was just not there. It was a Big Bang that happened at this minute place because something was like taking off, and it took off, and then the universe kept expanding, and became this infinite self that is still expanding, all right? That's the theory of Big Bang, right? And that's kind of how you become your infinite universe as well, if you want to really think about it, right? You don't say, I want to be the universe. You're not going to arrive like that. You arrive at the Big Bang. And the Big Bang is your first big action, or first action. Forget about the word big. First action, first bang that you would have, right? And that's to say, where do I start? Not where will I get to, because you will get to all of it, like how universe is ever expanding and still expanding. You will also get to your ever infinite potential. You will do a 10,000 person stage if that's your potential, that's your desire. You're going to do 100,000 people stage, whatever that is. You will do all of it. You are an infinite potential and you are infinite universe. But it must start with the small, minute bang that needs to happen for the journey to get started. So what is it there where you can have the biggest bang so your journey can start, right? So you ask yourself, hey, I want to be this speaker that speaks to 10,000 people, right? You want to be that speaker? Let's start with 1, because that's where you start. That's the bang, right? Let's start with 5. Let's start with 10. Let's see how this universe will keep expanding and creating these galaxies and all of that in the middle. What's the story that's going to get developed, which will become the solar system? What is the other story that's going to develop that will be a star in this universe, right? So you're finding along the journey of expansion all these creations that are getting created as you expand your potential. But you need to start with that one bang. So find that one bang. And that one bang will be one stage, will be one online presentation, offline presentation. Could be just you presenting to yourself. Could be you booking a venue and nobody showing up, but you're still making that presentation. It could be your first Instagram live. It could be your first reel. It could be anything. That's where the bang starts. And then you discover from it. You expand from it. You go, okay, what's the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing? And while you're creating, as you're expanding as the next thing, you must remember, it's not empty universe that we're expanding, because then it's going to be boring as hell. You got to build the solar system. You got to build a star. You got to build these other galaxies, which means this story that you have this niche that you would work in, this type of audience that you'll really resonate with. Find those different pieces that makes your universe interesting. Because when your universe becomes interesting, as it expands faster. It has more juice in it. It has more charisma in it. It has more confidence in it. It has more availability of presence in it. More just availability of the universe itself in it. Because you started by starting somewhere and then expanding through as if you're expanding a universe. So for a new coach, really to ask yourself is, what's your first step? What's your first step? And that first step could be anything. It could be booking a stage. It could be booking an online presentation. It could be making a reel on Instagram. It could be doing an Instagram live. It could be anything, because that will start your journey. That will show you, if you're present to it, it'll show you what are your fears that come up. Where do you fall? Where do you lose engagement? Where is it that somebody was actually interested? Where were people commenting back? So start anywhere and look for those feedback systems for you to find your authentic version. Like I said, we all think we are very authentic the day we start. We're not. We're concerned. We are fearful. We are unsure. We want to be feeling loved and accepted and so forth. You have to suspend all of that to actually be authentic. You can't feel, I want to be accepted and be authentic. It's not going to work.
Because that's getting in the way of you being authentic.
Yeah, because you're thinking, oh, I'm going to just change this a little bit. I'm not going to say this word because, I'm not going to be accepted if I did this. Instead of, no, that's just, if that's true for me. And that's how I'm going to show up, and that's it.
I really love the best step. Like I always say, take the next best step. I also love saying it's the bold move, right? What's the bold move? And the bold move doesn't have to be a big move. I didn't say big move. I said bold move. And so for some people, a bold move, like I know when I work with people on their camera confidence, getting on IG Live for them, doing an Instagram Live is a huge deal for them. Yeah. It is huge to be able to get on live and maybe no one shows up. But that's why I love that you said, even if you have to book a venue and no one shows up and you're just speaking, that's still a bold move.
Yeah. Put your phone on and say, I'm going to go live while nobody's in the audience, but I'm going to speak as if I'm speaking in front of audience. Absolutely okay. Whatever is the bold move, whatever is the first bang, as we talked about. Yeah.
I love the first bang. So I love that you no longer consider yourself an introvert. Actually, you've inspired me because I've called myself an introvert, and you've been like, Vas, you are not an introvert. Stop calling yourself
You're
that.
definitely never an
I
introvert.
really, no, but I
most definitely not.
I think what was happening,
even by the traditional definition of introvert, you were never an introvert. But sure, tell yourself that story because you feel cool.
I think, no, it's not about, stop it.
Introverts are cool. They're the coolest people.
It's not about being cool. I think I've said that because I just needed permission to be alone sometimes. And I think I feel guilty sometimes if I don't go out socialize. So I tell myself I'm an introvert.
But that's why you're an extrovert, because you feel guilty not going outside. An introvert would be like, glad that I'm not feeling guilty at all of not going outside. They want to be inside all the time.
I'm still figuring out, Ajit. Okay, so anyway, I want to know, what advice would you give people who are truly introverts, not wannabe introverts like me and Jason Goldberg? What advice would you give to people who truly are and do consider themselves introverts, like people who are introverted and they want to pursue a speaking career?
So I want to invite, if you're an introvert, or you believe you're an introvert, or you're introverted as a person, and you want to have a speaking career, here is a simple thing that you should learn today that will tell you that you're going to crush it as a speaker. Traditional understanding of an introvert, it's a reflective person. Right? They tend to want to sit by themselves and reflect on their life, read, consume content. Everything is very personal and private, not personal, but private. And they reflect in privacy. Right? An extrovert tends to have the same reflection, but they would like to talk it out with someone. Yeah. Right? That tends to be an extrovert, right? Because an introvert is so personally reflective as a person, they tend to have more opportunity to actually process a thought a lot more deeper than an extrovert. Because an extrovert needs somebody to talk it out with. So a lot of times, if you don't have a person, you haven't fully talked it out, right? And if you don't have a good person to talk to, then you haven't had a chance to really reflect, right? Well, an introvert doesn't need the tool of talking to someone, right? Which is why an introvert actually is a great presenter, because they have reflected on that thought so much and so deeply that they're really clear about what they're trying to say. And that allows them to be incredibly reflective even before they go on a stage or they go and give a presentation. They can almost design their presentation without even speaking to anyone, right? Wow. So actually an introvert is a more powerful speaker and tends to be a more powerful speaker. For that matter, you'll find most really powerful speakers are introverted as personalities. They actually like to run away from stage whenever they are off stage. Right? Which is not good as a presenter, because why did you present if you want to run away from people? But sure, that's at least the story that they tell themselves, is like, oh, I'm introverted, so I need to go find my cocoon now, or go in my room and order a glass of whatever, because, you know, I've done my job and I'm depleted, right? That's the story that an introvert tells themselves and believes it as well. But that's why you are a powerful speaker, because you know exactly, you have reflected on it so hard and so deep that you actually will land really well with the audience, and everything is very prepared. For an introvert, or tends to be really prepared, because again, they have spent so much time by themselves thinking about it, right? And at the same point of time, I want to challenge anybody that thinks they're an introvert or are introverted. What I found in my recent life is, I was taking a course on charisma, because I was getting on stages. I'm getting on many stages. I'm speaking to thousands of people. Like, well, to be able, one of the skills that is amazing on stage is if you can be more charismatic in the way you communicate. And it's a skill. It's not something that you're a charismatic or non-charismatic person. Charisma is a skill, right? So you could develop charisma. It's not so difficult. It's just a skill to develop. So I was studying for charisma. I was like, okay, how do I be a more charismatic speaker? Right. And as I was taking the course, there were many tools and techniques that you use. And one of the tools was, if you want to be more charismatic, hang out with people that you feel are more charismatic, because you will lean into, oh, that's what attracts me, right? So you kind of, you're what is called mirroring the person a little bit, right? So you're hanging out with people who are charismatic. They rate people on their charisma, the people that you know, so you can find out who's the more charismatic person, and you lean in and you talk to them more often, more frequent, so you can kind of understand, why do they feel charismatic to you? Why is it that you believe that they're charismatic people? As I was doing the exercise, I was like, hold on, this is a great exercise to just know what is it and who is it that I even love hanging out with. Forget about charismatic or not charismatic. Let's remove that filter and just say, do I like hanging out with this person? I was like, that's a great exercise for anybody to do, to go, oh, who do I like hanging out with? It's not like, I'm not trying to rate people here, but I'm trying to understand, where does my energy flow, right? What kind of people I even like. Otherwise it's very reactive, right? You just go, whoever I'm hanging out with, I'm hanging out with. And whoever next I'm hanging out with depends on whoever they are hanging out with, right? So it's not very intuitive. It's not very intentional. It's very reactive. And I like intentional life, and I love intentional living. So I said, okay, so let's kind of go, okay, who is it that I really hang out with, and how would I rate my energy level hanging out with them? And I realized that about 20-30% of the people that I was hanging out with pretty frequently, because of parties or whatever, I would go, oh, I don't actually like hanging out with them. I don't like the energy. I don't like the vibe. I don't like myself after I've hung out with them. And I also realized that when I'm interacting with those people is when I want to leave the party.
Oh, wow.
Right? So what was happening was, so when I hang out with person X, my energy depletes. And because if my energy depletes, I want to go to replenish, which is not an introvert trait. It's a human trait. It's nothing to do with introvert or extrovert. It's literally, you're tired. Right. You're like, I don't enjoy this interaction. And so I realized that if I hang out with people that deplete me, I become introverted, and I start to say, I'm an introvert.
Wow.
All right. Versus saying, if I just don't hang out with people that deplete me, I'm extroverted. It's not that we are not stopping our conversation ever. Like, we are not stopping our conversation ever. When we are between episodes, we're just chatting. Like, we're ordering food. It's not like I'm going, hey, listen, my introvert is coming out. I need to go in my room. Don't talk to me. That's not what happens, right? You're having a good time. You're having a good time.
Yeah.
We'll be talking for several hours. It's perfectly fine.
Right.
I'm not introverted when I'm loving the hangout, right? And that's true for anybody, introvert or extrovert. So what happens is extroverts just have a better way to replenish themselves. And so even if they had a shitty conversation, they can go to the next one and they will feel fulfilled, right? Or they will fuel themselves back. Versus considering yourself an introvert and then saying, oh crap, now I'm depleted. I need to go run away somewhere else to find my energy back. Well, I found I'm not introverted as a person if I hang out with the right people ever. Like, I don't need to refuel. I don't feel depleted. I feel just energized. So what if I just removed everyone that depletes me? Like, I don't have to hang out with people if they deplete my energy. I can be intentional about who I hang out with. And so I found myself not being introverted anymore. So I've done this in practice now, and as a speaker it's important, I think it's important, is because what would happen is you'll get on a stage, and let's say you did a fantastic presentation. The people in the audience were in tears. They had the greatest breakthrough they wanted in their life. They had that shift they really wanted, and now they want to thank you. They want to come and hug you, shake hands with you, take your signature on your book, just tell you how much you mean to them. And you, because you told yourself this bullshit story that you are an introvert, runs away to your room.
That's sad.
That's sad for you. It's sad for them. You never got to hear how important and how meaningful you were in somebody's life, which is probably one of the biggest joys of life you could have. And that person never got to tell their story to you. Both of you lost. But what if we switched the narrative and we said, no, these are my people. This is my people I'm going to hang out with. I'm going to get off stage and I'm going to meet as many of them want to meet me. I don't have to go out and meet people. That's okay. But if somebody wants to meet me, I'm right there. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to shy. I'm going to enjoy every conversation. I'm going to be with people that are there to give me positive energy because they're here to tell me if I did great, right? And that changed my narrative completely. So usually what would happen is even when I would speak on stage, I would be like the classic, oh, I'm depleted, I'll run to my room. And this time when I switched my narrative, I was like, no, if I love hanging out with people, I'll love hanging out with people. And if I don't like hanging out with someone, I will tell them that, hey, listen, I need to excuse myself. Like I will draw a good boundary. I will have my own shit together to say, oh, this is my boundary. I'm going to step away, right? And so I did this. We just had an event. There were 600 people that were at the event over 2 days. And this was our event called Super Coach Experience that we did in Tallinn, Estonia a couple of months ago. And as the events, as my talks would get over, crushing it on stage, everybody loving it, standing ovations through the entire event, all of that fun stuff. But usually when I would run away, I didn't run away. I would come back to the party. And then I would stay in the party till the time a person could stay in a party. Like if it was ending at 1, I was leaving at 1. Or maybe like if it's ending at 2, I'll leave at 1, something like that. But basically stay till late. Where it was so much so that Neeta, who's totally an extrovert from all definition side, she was like, dude, I am depleted. How is it that you are on? Because you're going to go on stage again tomorrow. You were on stage all day. You're going to go stage on tomorrow and you're still with everybody, talking to them, taking pictures with them, signing the book if they need to sign a book, whatever that is, just listening to stories. And I realized that's when I chose to say I'm not an introvert. Because and none of us are really. Who we are people who lean into energies. And if we can be present to that and be honest about our boundary when it's not good energy, we would not feel depleted ever. Which is one of the things that I shared with one of my fellow speakers when they told me, dude, how do you do these selfies? How do you do these, conversations? You probably spoke to like 100 people, took like 150 photos tonight or something like that. Like, how do you do it? I was like, because when I feel somebody's energy is not right for me, I am confident in myself enough to draw a boundary and say, thank you. It was really great meeting you, but I think I have to talk to the next person, or I have to step away. I need to get some water, or whatever the way I am drawing the boundary, but while being kind, of course, but simply to say, hey, I'm going to walk away from this conversation because I just don't feel the energy is of love and service and contribution and all the values that I have. And if the energy is that, I don't feel depleted. You can take 500 photos with me. I don't get tired at all.
You get to choose. You're not introverted. You're someone who knows your energy. You know how to set boundaries. So you're not really introverted. You know when it's time to go. You know when it's time to go, and you know how to manage that. Last question for you. Who is this journey for, this dream of being a speaker? Because we know that when you get on stage, it can vastly improve your business no matter what industry you're in. So who would you say speaking is for?
Speaking is for anyone who wants to impact an audience in a live setting or even a virtual setting in masses. That's really what speaking is for. Speaking is, for the matter, what am I saying? Speaking is for anyone really, because at any given time, you are communicating. This podcast is communication. Your speaking skills is going to help you be a better podcast interviewee or interviewer, right? You're a great speaker, which is why you ask great questions. You communicate really well. That's why we land so well, which is why I'm like, hey, let's just get Vasavi to do these interviews with me, right?
Yeah.
Because you are a great speaker yourself.
Thank you.
Right? And the better I get as a speaker, the more engaging this podcast is. So you could be doing podcasts, you could be doing coaching, you could be presenting to a small group, you could be presenting to a large group, you could be a parent. If your communication skills are better, your kid's going to engage with you better, right? You could be a partner in relationship with someone. If your communication skills, your speaking skills are better, your partner is going to understand you better. Communication, speaking is not just for the stage. Communication and speaking is for everyday life. And if you become a more impactful speaker, a better storyteller, anybody and anything in your life is going to be more engaging. Yeah. We as human beings love stories. That's why we love movies. We like books. We like all these different things. We engage. We love podcasts. The reason why you love listening to podcasts is because people are telling you stories, and everybody loves a good story. And storytelling, speaking is nothing but storytelling at a grand scheme of things, right? But if you have the skill of speaking, you'd really honestly, speaking is also the art of learning when to draw a boundary, how to finish something, how to start something. And all of that stuff is useful in day-to-day life. Everybody should know this art of speaking. Everybody should at least make an attempt to learn the art of speaking. Every kid should learn how to speak. Not because they need to be on big stages or small stages. That doesn't matter. To live a better life, you need to learn the art of speaking.
Do you think anyone in any industry, it doesn't matter, would their business improve if they decided to pursue public speaking?
If you have a business, you would be greatly benefited if you learned how to speak in public, because when you're presenting an offer, when you're communicating to a client, when you're coaching a client, if you know how to tone yourself, how to pace yourself, how to tell a story, when to pause, when not to pause, when to go fast, when to increase your voice, when to bring your voice lower, all of that impacts enrollment. All of that impacts your connection with the person. All of that impacts how many people will refer you. All of that is impacted. So yes, your business will 1,000% grow. If you become a better speaker, if you become a more confident, more charismatic speaker, if you can tell better stories, if you can connect the dots more easily, if you can be more succinct. Here's one of the biggest problems coaches have. They ramble.
They talked way too damn much.
Yeah, they ramble. They go into tangents that have nothing to do with the conversation that is at hand. And because they ramble, the person goes, hold on, but we were talking about this. Why are you in this other place that we never really, that we were never supposed to go? So the act of you rambling is because you've never dedicated time and effort into learning how to speak.
Yeah.
If you put a little bit of effort on how to speak, you'll find you will not ramble. You'll stick to the point. You know when the conversation's over. You know when you need to start telling a story, when you need to stop telling a story. There's a new special of Trevor Noah on Netflix. I forget the name of the actual special, but he talks about this idea, and I don't remember. It's in German. It basically, he introduces a word in the starting of his act, where he talks about this idea, which is basically the joy of seeing somebody else's pain. There's a German word for it. There's no translation of it. I do not remember the word itself, but the word itself is what the hook. Like, he talks about this word somewhere in the starting of the act. And then the word disappears, right? And then he's going into these different tangents and different stories. But at the end of it, the final story, it ends with somebody laughing at his pain. And he introduces that word again. So you think a ramble is a ramble. It's not a ramble. It's storytelling. Storytelling doesn't mean it is A to B to C. It means A will lead back to A somehow.
Yes.
Right? And it will all make sense in the end. And it doesn't have to make sense when it's actually happening, because the person's already engaged in A. They're like, tell me the finish line of A. But if you never get back to A, they're in an open loop. They're going, what that thing, like, why did we start that? That's storytelling.